Welcome to the Pediatric Playbook, where we guide growth in children and balance in ourselves. I'm Amanda, a pediatric occupational therapist, here to share stories, strategies, and insights to support parents, therapists, teachers, and caregivers as we navigate the ever-evolving world of child development together. From tackling potty training and sensory needs to celebrating milestones, this podcast is your go-to resource for practical advice, inspiring stories, and honest conversations. Each week, we'll explore topics that matter to you, whether you're a parent looking for answers or a pediatric OT, SLP, PT, or educator searching for fresh perspectives. I'll also sit down with other therapists and professionals to dive into their unique journeys and the lessons they've learned along the way. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's dive into this journey together. Whether you're here for personal growth, professional insights, or a little bit of both, I am so glad you're here. Welcome back to the Pediatric Playbook. I'm your host, Amanda, or better known as your pediatric OT on social media. And I'm so excited you're joining us today for a conversation that's packed with valuable insights for parents, therapists, and anyone invested in supporting young children's development. Today, we're diving into the world of early intervention speech therapy with a special guest, Elena, who you may recognize from social media as the Peds SLP. Elena holds a bachelor's degree in communication sciences and disorders with minors in Spanish and children's studies, as well as her master's degree in speech language pathology. Honestly, from the moment she started her clinical fellowship year, she has been passionately dedicated to early intervention and hasn't looked back since. Her wealth of experience and dedication to helping young children communicate and thrive is truly inspiring to all of us that have gotten to know her since she started showing up in the social media world. So, Elena, welcome to the Pediatric Playbook. I'm so thrilled to have you here.
I am so happy to be here.
Before we jump into our discussion today, could you just give our listeners a little background about the daily work that you do?
Yeah, so like you said, I have been in early intervention since I started my job and have truly never looked back. I've loved all the populations that I've worked with in the past, but EI specifically and these, birth to 3 have stolen my heart, and it is just so fun. So I am basically all home health, or if the kid's at a daycare, I'll go to their daycare. And I have a ton of flexibility in my schedule, which is awesome. So it's allowed me the opportunity to also pursue social media in some of my free time in between sessions, in between clients, where I can take the knowledge and experience that I have, practicing and being in the field and share it with everyone on social media too, which has been so much fun.
I know. I also work in early intervention, and I know how nice it's been to have this flexibility. And it's so awesome because I know so many parents don't have access to speech therapy or they're on a long wait list. So it's so nice that you're able to show up in this way to provide free resources for them. And your videos are so impactful. I literally go to your page multiple times a week just to share with parents. So I am so excited for us to dive into all the things.
Yeah, I am too.
Okay, so let's start by talking about some of those early signs. Parents often wonder, is my child's language development on track? Are they delayed? What are some early signs that parents should be looking for that may indicate that their child could benefit from speech therapy?
Yeah, so it's definitely important to know, the children develop at their own pace for sure. So keeping that in mind, but also there's a point where it's like they're going to need some more help and being able to recognize the signs that they might not catch up on their own. So some of the things that you can look for is, limited sound production. Are they babbling? If they're not babbling and making a variety of sounds by 6 months or starting to use a few sounds consistently, that's something that we would, want to look out for. Delayed language development overall, if they're not saying their first word by 12 months or not combining 2-word phrases by 2 years. Some difficulty following directions, like simple directions, or responding to their name. Poor articulation. So are they able to articulate sounds clearly? Are you able to understand what they're saying when they are saying them? Social interaction. So are they making eye contact? Are they engaging in that turn-taking reciprocal conversation? Or, some frustration with communication? Are they showing signs that they're trying to express something with you and there's a disconnect somewhere that is just leading to that frustration?
Yeah, that is so helpful. Even for me, sometimes parents are asking me and I'm like, I don't know. I think something's off, but those signs are super helpful for parents. And really, how can parents differentiate between what's a normal variation in that language development and when, there might actually be that delay?
Yeah, so this is a hard one, and it's something that I don't really touch on social media just because there's so much out there. You are your child's expert. You know everything about them. You are able to kind of determine, is this something that is consistent with them, and being able to recognize, comparing it to some of those milestones and the norms. Are they kind of following along with this? Is there a lot of gaps in where you're seeing that they are making some progress, or maybe they're not in other areas? And kind of keeping track of it that way so that you can bring up some of those concerns, with your pediatrician, or you can, say your pediatrician doesn't want to go forward with an evaluation and you still do. You can take those concerns and bring them so that you can get that evaluation scheduled.
Yeah, I love that. I'm constantly recommending to parents to write things down in the note section on their phone. Anything you see that seems like a weird quirk or a concern that you're having or anything like that, write it down, bring it up. If you already have therapists out there coming to see, bring it up with them, each visit. Or if not, you have those regular checkups. I know a lot of hospital systems now and pediatrician offices allow you to just send messages to your doctor here and there. Shoot a quick message and just ask them for that referral for any area of development. There's so much access to this stuff now, and just being your child's advocate is so important in all realms of development.
Absolutely. Completely agree.
So, exactly. Let's get a little bit more practical now. Okay. So, parents always want to know how they can support their child's development at home. What are some of the strategies that you recommend to create a super language rich environment during their everyday activities, like during meal times or play?
Yeah, so actually, I have an entire resource dedicated to strategies that you can use at home. And it kind of takes everything that I post on social media and puts it into a way larger, more information, everything kind of packed in their resource for you.
That
But so that's an awesome one that's already out there. But, creating that language rich environment for your child is so important. And what that means is, it's basically an environment that encourages language development through play and through those natural interactions. You're, providing an environment where the child is actively exposed to a high volume of meaningful language opportunities, engaging activities, and purposeful communication to stimulate that, communication development and language skills. So some things that you can do at home instead of, just giving them, here's this, offer, two choices. Model the words that you want them to use, model any signs, any sounds, whatever you want them to say or do, model it for them, because that's how kids learn. They're going to learn from what they see and hear being done around them. So, modeling, giving them really nice pauses. It's hard at first. I like to say to take 10 seconds and count in my head before, responding to either an attempt at an attempt at having them imitate something, but they just need a little bit longer time to process what's being said to them. And that silence at first is a little bit uncomfortable, but once you see the effects, it's so fun just to, get that language flowing. You can set up some communication temptations, and this is something like maybe giving them a package of their favorite snack that's not open. So you're setting up an opportunity for them to communicate something with you. You give them that snack and they can't open it. They're going to need to communicate with you somehow that they need help. They want it open. They want more. Maybe give them their breakfast without a utensil if they use utensils and they're looking at this yogurt like, I'm missing something. I mean,
yeah.
your spoon. So setting up opportunities for them to communicate a want, a need, or that desire with you.
Yeah, those are some amazing ideas. And I have to remind myself of that too. I try to incorporate, especially for my kiddos that I know are on a wait list for speech, just from watching your videos. I have learned so much and I try to incorporate some of those things as well. And that 10-second pause is so hard. But today I had, a little kid. I always love to use the ready, set, go. And I had a kiddo and he had not done the go for me before in our previous sessions. And the first time I did it, I didn't pause quite long enough. I made it maybe 3 seconds and I said it and he like started to say it as I was saying it. I was like, oh, I took the opportunity away from you. But then the next time we did it, he said it. And then the next like 5 times he was doing it. So I was like so excited. So I can only imagine like how the parents feel when they use these strategies that you teach them. And it's so exciting to hear these words come out.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And like we just live in such a fast-paced environment where we're like, we need to be saying something constantly. And we always need to be having an answer from them. And they need to respond to us immediately. And it's like, hold on, like take a second to breathe, like sometimes it's regulating for us to take that 10 seconds, count in our head or let them figure out. There's been times, I think the highest I've counted was, I want to say 27, and he did it, which was like
Wow.
so exciting. And then it slowly started getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter as he was continuing to develop and progress in those skills. It didn't take him as long to process what was being said to him and respond.
Yeah, that is amazing. And, on this note, I would just love to hear about the collaborative aspect of your day-to-day work that you're doing. Like, how does a collaboration between the OTs and the speech therapists benefit the children that you're specifically working with? I know I'm constantly trying to collaborate with the other professionals that my clients are seeing.
Absolutely. And this was something that I never really expected going into early intervention specifically, since that's where I've been, since I graduated. But I have loved being able to work with all the OTs that I've worked with so far. I feel like I've learned so much, and it has been honestly a game changer in the way that I approach therapy for certain kids, but also just like to have some of these tools in my back pocket to pull out. I'm sure obviously, a lot about regulation, and when a child's not regulated, they don't have that access to language and communication. And so, if I'm in a session and my child's dysregulated, being able to have strategies that either an OT's there and we're doing a co-treat, or it's things that I've learned, I've picked up from working with some, just being able to provide some of these strategies to help regulate the child, to get them back to a place where they have that access to communication and have that access to language again, is incredible. And then just completely opening up the door for learning about sensory profiles and being able to, try and meet some of those sensory needs for some of these kids has been incredible. Just seeing the changes that, when they're regulated and those needs are being met, how much more we're able to connect and get out of them.
For sure. And I wish that, those co-treats were a little better funded and reimbursed by insurance. I know it can be kind of tricky to navigate that as a therapist, but it is so helpful to have both sets of eyes and brains working on looking at the child from different lenses and seeing, okay, they're doing, or you're doing this that way. Like, what if you just adjusted this position or the tone of your voice or this or that and see how they respond or react. And it's crazy how much sensory just impacts everything. And I love that, speech therapists are becoming so much more involved in sensory, and physical therapists as well, because it's such an important, bottom of the pyramid part of development that's sometimes missed. And it was definitely missed in, schooling back in the day. And hopefully it's becoming more and more, invested in.
Absolutely. I hope so. I wish I learned more about it in any of the education that I've, gone through. But
even as an OT, I feel like I could have definitely learned more. I'm constantly like looking up new continuing ed podcasts or, units that I can take and videos I can watch, because there's just not enough information I feel like I could ever take in to be able to serve the variety of kids that we work with.
yeah. And once you start implementing some of these techniques and see the difference that it makes pretty much immediately,
Yes.
you're so much more motivated to want to learn more for, you can think of kids right off the bat where, oh my gosh, this strategy would be awesome for this child, or all these different things. And being able to see the progress that they make when they're regulated, when their sensory needs are being met, and they're not in that fight or flight or that chaos of something in my body is telling me I'm not safe. I need to be, the alarms are going off. How do we get those alarms to settle down and
Yes.
be ready to learn again?
Yeah, it's so important. I feel like I could talk about sensory forever, and kind of like shifting gears, but staying in that sensory world. Sensory and feeding, I know, is so combined and overcrossing. And I know feeding and oral motor skills are often talked about in relation to speech development, but I feel like many parents aren't really sure exactly how the two can be connected. Can you explain a little bit that relationship between those oral motor skills and a child's ability to speak clearly and effectively?
Yeah, so having some oral motor skills is definitely crucial when it comes to speech development. If you think about just everything in your mouth that you need to be able to have control over, to be able to articulate different sounds, get your lips in the right position, use your teeth, your tongue, your jaw, your cheeks, all these different systems are coming together at once to work on a very challenging, but like fluid and fast motion to be able to get, the sounds to be produced the right way. In terms of sensory with feeding, there's a huge connection there of, if a child's not liking something sticky on their hands, there's a pretty high chance that they're not going to want something sticky up in their mouth too. Um,
Yes.
and being able to determine, like, do they have the oral motor skills to successfully bite, chew, swallow, and manage all the food that you're giving them? Do they need some sensory support to find, other alternatives or work on some of the sensory components to feeding where, the OT comes in and helps tremendously with that to bring it together as a whole to help your child start, eating a variety of different things or adding different textures and consistencies into what they're eating and looking at it from both those angles.
Yeah, for sure. And is there anything that parents should really like look out for or notice during their daily activities, like eating and drinking that would be a red sign or a cue to them, like they might be struggling with some oral motor issues?
And I think the biggest one would be, if they are super picky with what they will tolerate, a lot of times you'll see them, chucking things on the floor when they're like, I want nothing to do with this. So being able to, if your child's a super picky eater, do they have a good variety of the different food components? Are they getting proteins? Are they getting starches? Are they getting carbs? While they're eating or drinking, are they coughing or showing signs of aspiration that, they're not able to manage the food? Are they gagging? Are they throwing up? Some of those more physical signs of something is their body's responding physically to the food that they're being offered.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. And I know when it comes to feeding difficulties, parents and even professionals and other people on the internet sometimes thinks that it's just a phase and that their kid will outgrow this and get over it. I know that's a big thing right now, the just wait and see. But, it's really important that parents can recognize these concerns and issues and know when they might require professional intervention and, gagging and choking and spitting up and the inability to chew foods and pocketing, those foods looking like a chipmunk, those are signs that there's something more going on. Those are not normal. That's not normal development of feeding and oral motor skills. And it never hurts to have a professional come in. And even if it's just an evaluation and a couple sessions to help them, get through and learn some strategies on how to help their child develop. But, I think a lot of times, and you can talk to this, I'm sure too, when children are, dealing with these gagging and throwing up and all of those things early on, they have food avoidances when they get older because that's how they associate, with meal times is painful and, annoying.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the biggest things, especially for the kids that I see with more complex medical needs or a little bit more of that medical trauma, is we see they associate those feelings of discomfort or pain. Throwing up isn't a fun experience. If
Mm-mm.
you threw up every single time you went to go eat, I'm sure you would go to sit down and eat and be like, I don't want to do this because I know what's going to happen. That's the
Yes.
same exact thing for these kids. And so before we even start focusing on anything related to eating the food, and secret is out, whenever I'm in feeding therapy, the goal is typically not for the child to actually eat the food. Um,
Yes. Thank you.
that's usually never even my goal, to be honest. But one of the first things that we focus on is focusing on those positive interactions around food. You want them to be excited about food because then they're in a state where they're regulated. They're in a state where they're willing to learn and engage with what's in front of them and not shutting down because that fight or flight's kicking in. They are getting, signals to their brain. This is not safe. This is painful. I'm not comfortable with this, which will instantly turn their appetite off. So even things that they used to eat or would always eat beforehand, they're going to want nothing to do with because they're checked out, they're done.
Yeah.
So really focusing on fostering those positive mealtime experiences and routines consistently so that they can, begin to associate mealtime with a more positive experience.
Yeah, I would love to know if there's any research out there that says like how many positive experiences it takes to override those negative experiences. For some reason, I feel like just one negative experience can send a child just like off the deep end, and it takes so many times and trials and days to get them back to making that positive association. And it's like that, for anyone that's ever gone through anything that's like hard, sad, painful, we immediately just associate that to that experience without ever even taking into account all of the good and positive experiences we've had.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't know that there is a specific number. That would be interesting if there is research on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and that's always such a hard one for families to kind of grasp of like when we're having sessions and like the kid isn't eating because that's not what we're focusing on. But like being able to wrap your head around like this still is progress and breaking it down step by step. Why is this bottom step so important? Well, you can't progress up and get to these higher steps if they're not even having a good time sitting at the table right there.
Yep. And any progress is good progress. That's what I always say.
Absolutely.
And it kind of piggybacking off that, there's just a lot of information out there right now circulating about speech and language delays. And unfortunately, some of it is just straight up not accurate. What are some common myths or misconceptions that you would like to just get out there and debunk for our audience?
I think the biggest one, and you can probably relate to it too, we are not just playing with kids. A lot of times I'll hear like all they do is play or they're not doing anything. They're just playing with the toy. I like to call it playing with a purpose because yes, we are playing, but there is so much more going on than just playing. And as a play-based therapist, all of my therapy sessions are play. So kids learn through playful experiences when they're having fun. And so why wouldn't we target their goals in ways where they're having fun doing it? That's how they learn.
Want you to scream it louder for the people in the back.
Yeah. Like you might see us just sitting there like rolling a ball back and forth, but there is so much more going on behind the scenes of that. And that's, the things that we're working on during activities like that are things where as a provider, we're educating you as the parent or caregiver on what we're doing, why we're doing it, how you can do it so that you can carry over these strategies in other playful experiences as well outside of our sessions.
Yeah, it's what they do most. They're meant to be playing. We don't really have much other things on their to-do list at that age.
Exactly. And we can help them by doing something maybe a little differently than what you might have been doing before, to help with that development. But I think that's probably the biggest myth I see. And then another really big one that I see is that, speaking two languages or bilingualism will cause a language delay. And that is also not true. These little brains are so plastic and such sponges that they are absorbing everything. And it breaks my heart when I hear a family say that they stopped speaking their native language because they were told that's what's causing their kids' speech or language delay. That's not true. Keep speaking, whatever language is, and they'll still pick up on it.
Yeah. And with that, I mean, that's so important to know. And I think that you're right. That is such a common myth out there right now. And I hear it constantly, even from the pediatricians and people that are making these referrals are, they have that belief as well. And kind of going the same with that, the AAC device, what are your thoughts? Do you think that this actually helps develop? And do you think it hinders speech development? Like, what are your views on that? Because that's a myth that I see floating around from early interventionists and coordinators, and even some speech therapists have mixed views on it.
I am on the side of it. Allow them access to communication. It will not hinder their speech development. It's the same. It's not the same. It's similar to the one I hear all the time, like, I don't want to teach my baby sign language because that's going to make them not talk and not use words. by giving them access to AAC and by giving them these gestures or these signs that they can be using, you're giving them the ability to communicate with you. You're giving them the opportunity to express their wants and needs with you. If you're not, then you'll likely see more of those problem behaviors, as they're labeled, because the child will likely just be frustrated that they can't express any of these wants and needs with you.
I totally agree. I'm all for, whatever kind of, communication that they are benefiting from, if it's using, cards or, a visual schedule or, especially if the speech therapist is able to get access to that for the family, that, AAC device for them. And I'm thinking more of the more computerized version of it. But I know so many of these kids, that's what they connect with so much, is those screens. And it could be so helpful for them in just understanding how to communicate with you and reduce those meltdowns and frustrations that they are unfortunately dealing with all day long. And that's, I know, one topic kind of going off of the screen time version of the AAC, but I know that's on every parent's mind these days right now, is screen time. How much, how little, is it okay? Is it not? How do you think exposure to screens and this digital media world is affecting language development in our new young youth and children?
Yeah, so research definitely says that prolonged screen time can affect language development and increase the language delays. Now, do I think that it's always realistic to have zero screen time for these kids? No. That's sometimes it's just not possible, and that's totally okay. I'm not shaming anyone for using screen time, but
Yeah.
I think that it's important to recognize that it can be used intentionally and it can be really beneficial if it's used appropriately, if it's used in moderation. So not just, reactively putting a screen in front of a child who's having a meltdown because that's the only thing that will, regulate them. But you can also make screen time better. So you can find, not everything is created equally. So finding some options out there that are, maybe more interactive, maybe they're more slower paced, they promote positive and kind behavior, they might have some more educational value. There's definitely some screen time options out there that I pull my hair out when I hear that's the only thing that will engage a child is that specific thing. But there's ways that you can, if you're able to watch the show with them and pause it and interact with it and, act out what they're doing or respond and interact with your child while the show is going on. Or are you using screen time as a crutch where, you know, maybe you need to get something done in the kitchen? Are you able to, instead of throwing something on the screen, are you able to, maybe get some of those magnet letters out, stick them on the dishwasher, and your child can play with those and you can, kind of interact with them that way while you're cooking dinner, for example, or, giving them little tasks. So figuring out, what are you using it for slash why and how? And is there something that you can be doing, instead of obviously just shoving a screen in front of your child's face all day?
Yeah. It's obviously, a very easy option. Kids are never going to be upset when they're in, front of a screen that's playing their favorite character. It's very, we like melt into our screens even as adults, and so because kids, our brains, like you were saying, are so spongy and malleable and like easy to transform, like they are just soaking that in. Their brain is like eager for all of that, like light, sound, all of that, sensory input that they get from the screen. But knowing, children have to learn how to regulate outside of the screen. And one of the big things I've been loving seeing floating around the last 2 years is the Tony box. I don't know if
Mhm.
you recommended them. I know they're a little pricey, but so, I always tell parents, if you can't afford it, it's not a must have product. But if you're looking for one of those like higher price gift options for your child, they can choose a character, they can listen to a story without having a screen, but it's still something that's interactive, or even just putting on, hey, Alexa, play this song for me. And it's from your kid's favorite movie, but then they're not actually having to watch it. They can still hear it. They can still have that sensory experience of noise and dancing. But, like you said, there's so many options out there, but I know there's a lot of shame involved around it. And that's, no professionals, you know, avenue that they're trying to get on. They're not trying
Mhm.
to shame any parents, but the research is so strong in showing the impact that it is having on those language delays and those emotional regulation and sensory issues. And we really
Bringing their
want to.
attention.
Yes, and it's heartbreaking to know that, some of these kids might be, less delayed or more caught up with their peers if, we would just give them an hour less of screen time a day or a little bit more one-on-one time with our parents. And sometimes it really is just that connection time that we're losing. And, I think even adults can probably feel this way with their partners too. You get home and it's easy after work to just throw the TV on. You sit down and you eat dinner while watching TV and, you're doing that, but it's so passive and there's no like interaction with each other when that's happening constantly. And so if we think about that as well from like the adult standpoint, I think like, wow, there's so many times where I just need that conversation and that connection, and you miss it when that screen comes into play.
And even just think about the amount of times that you pull your phone out and you're, scrolling, or the amount of times your child sees you on your phone. It's not realistic for us to be like, no screen time for us either, but there's things that we can do that are obviously better than others as well. So just being able to, figure that out and balance that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Elena, this has been beyond insightful, and I have learned literally so much from you. I feel like I could talk to you about this for hours on end. But before we wrap up, what are your top takeaways or little pieces of advice for parents or therapists when it comes to early intervention, speech, and language development?
I think the biggest one that I would probably get tattooed on my forehead is do not just wait and see. If someone tells you, let's wait and see, say, see you later, I'm going to go see someone else and get that evaluation either scheduled or referred for. That is such an outdated approach that unfortunately so many people still follow and abide by. And it's just simply not the case. It is honestly kind of harmful to the families that are believing it. And then, they end up waiting and seeing that their child is now just even further delayed than they were when they initially brought up those concerns. So, your child best, make the call, for advocating for your child and reaching out to those that, you might need to for an evaluation if whoever you bring it up to at first is kind of dismissing those concerns.
Oh, yes, that is so important. I'm so glad you brought that up because that is like the number one like ick that I think therapists have right now is that wait and see statement.
Yeah. Every time I hear it, I'm like, no. I like when I start with a new family and they're like, well, we initially like brought up concerns, at this appointment. And then they told us to wait. So then we waited till this one and then this one and then this one. And I'm sitting there like, we could have been helping you for a whole year if they just put the request for that referral and for that evaluation, the concerns were brought up.
I feel that way with all realms of development. It is so frustrating. So yes, parents, do not wait and see. Go get an evaluation. Maybe everything's fine. It's no harm done in getting the evaluation and just making sure your child is on track for those later milestones. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all of this valuable information. Where can our listeners find you online or learn more about your work?
Yeah, so my username, like you said in the beginning, I am peds_SLP on social media. And everything is pretty much either on my social media or in the link in my bio. I have access to some of my paid resources as well as a good chunk of freebies that I'm constantly updating. I have links to, any of the toys and products that I love. They're all being updated constantly. And everything's kind of just right there.
That is so amazing. I will make sure to include links to all of those resources and your accounts in our show notes today. Thank you again so much for joining us, Elena. It has been a pleasure chatting with you.
It has been so much fun. So thank you.
To our listeners, I hope you found today's conversation as insightful as I did. Remember, early action can make such a huge difference in your child's development, and there's always support available for you and your child. If you'd like to connect with Elena or explore her resources, be sure to check the show notes. Thank you again for being part of the Pediatric Playbook community. Until next time, take care and keep nurturing growth in your little ones and yourself. See you later. I hope you enjoyed this week's conversation and found it helpful as you navigate along this journey, whether that's supporting kids, growing as a therapist, or both. If you're looking for more resources, tips, or support, be sure to check out my website linked in the show notes and connect with me on social media at Your Pediatric OT on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, or wherever else you can find me. You'll find everything from free guides to in-depth courses designed to help you make an even bigger impact. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Pediatric Playbook. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend or colleague who'd love it too. I can't wait to see you next time, same place, same time, right here on the Pediatric Playbook.